Oh, sorry, I was just thinking about the future. When people think about the future, there's a tendency to focus on the near future, the next couple hundred, maybe 1,000 years at most. But the future is a vast and infinite place that spans from now till the end of time. I think we often avoid thinking about the far and distant future because our minds can't really come to terms with such large time spans as millions or billions of years. And thinking about things like the death of our sun or the heat death of the universe can evoke a sense of existential terror. That's not going to stop us, however. Today, we're going to take a journey into the depths of time. We're going to see things you can't imagine or even understand. This is the far future Iceberg. Alright, before we start going through all the different levels, I should probably mention that all of these things are just predictions. While some of these predictions are fairly solid, a lot of them are just guesses based on vague assumptions. And because of that, I thought I might also include some fictional worlds in this iceberg, to see how they compare to people's real-life predictions. And the first fictional world on the first level we're going to talk about is Star Trek. Star Trek takes place in the 23rd and 24th centuries, and I'd say it's a very optimistic view of the future. In the world of Star Trek, Earth has achieved world peace and mankind has colonized the stars. While there are still enemy races like the Romulans or the Cardassians, most of the galaxy is under control of the Federation, a utopian government comprised of many different peaceful humanoid races. Planets with developing civilizations are left alone in isolation, and they're only contacted once they become technologically advanced enough to join the Federation as an equal. In a slightly more pessimistic view of the 24th century, we have the world of the video game Starfield. In Starfield, mankind has colonized the stars, but has also completely destroyed the Earth, which is now just a barren desert. In Star Trek, there are many other intelligent races of life, but in Starfield, there's only people, which makes the whole galaxy feel kind of lonely. Type 1 civilization. This refers to the Kardashev scale, which is a method to measure how advanced a civilization has become. A Type 1 civilization is one that's able to harness 100% of the energy its planet produces, and it's estimated humanity will reach this level sometime in the 24th century. Death of the Amazon rainforest. Current climate projections predict that if temperature changes and deforestation continue at their current rates, the forest cover in the Amazon will be completely gone by the 26th century. This would not only be a cataclysmic event for all the different species of animals that call the Amazon rainforest home, but it would also remove an essential carbon sink from the Earth, which would cause climate change to greatly accelerate. As Slow as Possible. As Slow as Possible is a piece of music written by avant-garde composer John Cage, and it's very long. In fact, it takes 639 years to play the piece in its entirety, with each note of the piece lasting about a year. It's played on an organ using an automated system of sandbags that raise and lower to play different notes. The performance of As Slow as Possible started in 2001 and is due to finish in the year 2640. Hyperion. Hyperion is a science fiction book written by Dan Simmons, and it takes place in the 28th century. Like Starfield and Star Trek, mankind has colonized the stars, but this is the bleakest fictional world in this level. The galaxy is essentially at war and on the brink of mutually assured destruction. The main characters of the book are on a pilgrimage to visit an entity on the planet Hyperion called the Shriek, which has the ability to manipulate time. Hyperion is a great book, and it's got some really interesting concepts like the Ousters, a group of humans who decided 300 years prior to live exclusively in spaceships in zero-G moving between the stars. After living in this environment for hundreds of years, their bodies have adapted by becoming horribly pale, thin, and elongated. They barely look human anymore. We'll touch on a real-life concept very similar to this later on in the video, but for now, let's move on to level 2 of this iceberg. The years 3000 to 10,000. Planet of the Apes. Our fourth fictional world takes place 2,000 years in the future, where human civilization has been completely wiped out by nuclear war and replaced by a race of intelligent monkeys. This isn't exactly serious science fiction, but it's a great campy 60s movie. Arctic World Archive. This is a giant steel vault buried deep beneath the northern islands of Svalbard in Norway. The Arctic World Archive contains important cultural data from many countries around the world, including a backup of all the open source programming repositories currently available on GitHub. This data is stored on reels of polyester film which will last until the year 4000. Type 2 civilization. On the Kardashev scale, a Type 2 civilization is one that can harness 100% of the energy its sun produces. Theoretically, this would be accomplished by using something called a Dyson sphere, a gigantic mechanical sphere that would completely encompass a star and absorb all of its energy. Astronomers have actually been searching for signs of a Dyson sphere in distant solar systems, and while they've come up with a few possible candidates, there's never been a confirmed sighting. If annual increases in energy production remain consistent, humanity will achieve Type 2 status in the 53rd century. Type 3 civilization. A Type 3 civilization is one that can harness the complete power of its galaxy and every celestial object within it. This is obviously an absurd notion. The Milky Way alone has billions of stars and planets, but using the same estimation of current annual increases in energy production, humanity would reach Type 3 status sometime in the 78th century. Exponential growth is a crazy thing. Svalbard Seed Vault. Much like the Arctic World Archive, the Svalbard Seed Vault is another Armageddon-proof repository on the Norwegian archipelago of Svalbard. The purpose of this underground vault is to preserve 1.2 million different kinds of seeds from almost every country in the world, which can be used to prevent the extinction of various food crops. These seeds are stored frozen at -18 degrees Celsius using the natural cold temperatures of Svalbard. The lifespan of the seed vault is 10,000 years. Waste Isolation Pilot Plant. The Waste Isolation Pilot Plant is a giant underground bunker in the American desert that's designed to store dangerous radioactive waste in isolation. The bunker is located 600 meters underground and is designed to last for 10,000 years. Because of this large time span, a lot of thought was put into communicating danger in a universal way to any future humans that might come across this bunker thousands of years in the future. A simple warning message written in 6 different languages is placed in various locations around the bunker, and they're accompanied by pictograms depicting various danger signs and also human faces in a state of pain. The bunker was also designed architecturally to feel hostile. The Sandia National Laboratory and American National Nuclear Security Administration Research Lab also added the following message to the bunker.
This place is a message and part of a system of messages. Pay attention to it. Sending this message was important to us. We considered ourselves to be a powerful culture. This place is not a place of honor. No highly esteemed deed is commemorated here. Nothing valued is here. What is here was dangerous and repulsive to us. This message is a warning about danger. The danger is in a particular location. It increases towards the center. The center of danger is here, of a particular size and shape, and below us. The danger is still present in your time as it was in ours. The danger is to the body and it can kill. The form of the danger is an emanation of energy. The danger is unleashed only if you substantially disturb this place physically. This place is best shunned and left uninhabited.
Alright, we're up to the year 10,000. From here on out, the clock is going to start ticking a little faster. Like I said, the future is a big place, and if we're going to see all of it, we're going to have to step on the gas a little. The next level is going to take us all the way to the year 100,000. Tropical Sahara. The Sahara Desert is the largest desert in the world, spanning the entire width of Africa, but because of shifts in monsoon circulation, in 15,000 years, the Sahara Desert may become a tropical wetland like it once had been more than 5,000 years ago. Needless to say, this would have a huge impact both on geography and on humans. The culture of northern and sub-Saharan Africa are quite distinct from each other because of geographical isolation. It's possible that with a tropical and habitable Sahara, we would see that distinction shrink over time. Supervolcanic extinction event. A supervolcanic eruption is an eruption with a volcanic explosivity index, or VEI, of 8, the largest possible value. A VEI of 8 means the volcano would be spewing up at least 1,000 cubic kilometers of debris. An eruption of this magnitude would have the power to cover entire continents with inches of ash, and it could even change the climate globally for many years. The last time a super eruption occurred was 26,000 years ago in New Zealand when the Taupo volcano erupted. New Zealand wasn't yet settled by humans when this happened. In fact, we were all still hunter-gatherers living thousands of kilometers away when the supervolcano erupted. Human civilization has never experienced an event like this, and if it were to happen, it would have massive global consequences for all of us. These super eruptions happen every 5 to 47,000 years, which means the next one will happen sometime in the next 15,000 years. Complete lingual divergence. Languages change over time. New words get added, old words get removed, and current words get changed. English from 1,000 years ago is completely unrecognizable to English speakers today. The modern form of English as we know it only began around 400 years ago. The study of how languages change over time is called glottochronology, and according to Morris Swadesh, an American linguist, all languages on Earth 20,000 years in the future will have a vocabulary that is 99% different than today. So if you were to time travel 20,000 years in the future, you would not be able to communicate with anyone no matter what languages you were able to speak. And that's assuming current languages aren't dead and completely replaced by new languages. Maybe you get lucky and you find someone who studied English in school like people study Latin today. Dune. Dune is a book written by Frank Herbert and is set 20,000 years in the future. Like all the other fictional universes we've talked about so far, in Dune, humans have colonized a galaxy. Although human society has regressed back to a feudal system with different houses of noble people holding all of the power. The book centers around the planet Arrakis, which harbors the only known natural source of the spice, a substance that can extend human life and enhance mental abilities. Dune is an example of a genre called far future fantasy, a subgenre of science fiction that deals with human societies of the far future that have regressed enough to resemble the traditional and ritualistic societies of fantasy novels. In fantasy stories, magic just more or less exists as some mysterious force, but in far future fantasy, magical elements exist because of now poorly understood human or alien technological advancements, or because of strange discoveries made in the far reaches of space. We'll touch a little more on far future fantasy later on in the video. Chernobyl recovery. In 1986, a reactor at the Soviet Chernobyl nuclear plant in modern-day Ukraine exploded and caused what was arguably the worst accidental nuclear disaster of all time. The Chernobyl disaster sent radioactive dust all across Europe, and the 2,600 square kilometer area around the plant was deemed completely uninhabitable due to residual radiation. This is a very large area, and it includes entire cities like Pripyat, which have now laid abandoned for 38 years and are slowly being taken over by nature. In 24,000 years, the 2,600 kilometer wide exclusion zone will finally be free of radiation, and people will once again be able to safely live there. The Arecibo message. The Arecibo message was a radio broadcast sent out by astronomers in 1974 to Messier 13, a giant cluster of stars in a distant region of our galaxy. The radio broadcast contained a simple binary message that when laid out on a grid depicts a ton of information, including the chemical makeup of DNA, the shape and average height of a human, and the Earth's position in our solar system. Right now, the Arecibo message is flying through interstellar space, and it won't reach its destination for another 25,000 years. New Ice Age. Or rather, in 50,000 years, we will enter the glacial period of the current Ice Age, which means that global temperatures will drop far enough that much of the northern hemisphere will become covered in a giant ice sheet. So even if no supervolcanoes erupt, much of the western world will be destroyed anyways. Although if current levels of global warming continue, it's possible this ice age will either be greatly delayed or avoided entirely. And with that, we're now at level 4. This level will bring us all the way to the year 1 million, and this is a bit of a weird time in terms of future predictions. 1 million years is an unimaginably large span of time in terms of humanity, and because of that, it's hard to make accurate predictions about where we'll be in this time. But in terms of the natural world and the universe, 1 million years is a pretty short amount of time, and a lot of the existentially terrifying things that are gonna happen to the Earth and the universe are still far, far ahead of this time period. So because of that, this level only has a couple things. Mars terraformation. The idea of humanity expanding past Earth and colonizing the stars has been in our collective consciousness since we've been able to lay eyes on other planets. And when we theorize about the first potential human space colony, the planet we usually set our sights on is Mars. Mars is the closest planet to Earth, and it lives pretty much right on the outer edge of the habitable zone of our solar system. While it wouldn't support life in its current state, it could potentially support life if humans are able to make some changes to Mars to make it more like Earth. These changes would include things like creating a stronger and higher pressured atmosphere and inducing global warming to raise surface temperatures. These are the most essential and necessary things that would need to happen to support life, but many other things would have to happen as well to make Mars comfortable, like releasing oxygen and nitrogen into the air to make it breathable, purifying the toxic soil, and creating some kind of ozone layer to protect against solar radiation. There have been many proposed methods to terraform Mars. Some of them are pretty wild, like putting up giant mirrors around the planet to reflect sunlight, or setting off 10,000 nuclear bombs in Mars's polar region to melt the ice and release carbon dioxide. But if we were to go with a more viable solution, like planting vegetation around the planet to create an oxygen-rich atmosphere, we would have a human habitable Mars in the year 100,000 if we started terraforming today. The Badlands Erosion. The Badlands are a really interesting national park in South Dakota. It consists of smooth rocky hills with red streaks running along them. It almost looks like a CGI or something. The Badlands were caused by the slow erosion of giant sharp hills of stone over hundreds of thousands of years, and in the year 500,000, the Badlands will get eroded down into a flat prairie, like much of the land that surrounds it. Time Machine. Time Machine is an 1895 novella by English author H.G. Wells. It's not only one of the oldest science fiction stories, but it's also the first ever work of far future science fiction. The story revolves around a man who creates a time machine and uses it to travel to the year 802,701. The world he finds himself in is completely unrecognizable, but not in the usual way science fiction depicts the future. This isn't an advanced technological utopia or a post-apocalyptic wasteland, but rather a world where humanity has been in slow decline for hundreds of thousands of years. At some point in the past, mankind achieved world peace and found a way to live a simple life in harmony with nature, but a consequence of achieving this peace was the slow erosion of humanity's strengths. Without any goals to strive for, the human ability to problem solve, strategize, and shape the world around us all atrophied and was slowly lost throughout many eons. As a result, humans in this time period still live a more or less utopian life in harmony with nature, but they have the appearance and the physical and mental capabilities of children. The systems their forefathers put into place to achieve this utopia are also decaying in some ways, but humans no longer possess the ability to fix any of it. I don't want to spoil too much of the Time Machine because I think out of every book I talk about in this video, this one was the hardest to put down. It's a surprisingly interesting and unique view of the far future, especially for the time period it was written in. Memory of Mankind. Memory of Mankind is a time capsule project much like the Svalbard Seed Vault and the Arctic World Archive, although the Memory of Mankind project has a focus on durability and endurance. The project was inspired by the clay tablets of the Sumerian civilization, which have lasted in pristine condition for thousands of years. Memory of Mankind consists of huge amounts of written data, including news articles, entire magazines, dictionaries, and even social media profiles, which are all etched into dense ceramic tablets that can survive water, radiation, intense pressure, and temperatures up to 1200 degrees Celsius. These tablets are then stored 200 meters underground in the Halberstadt salt mine in Austria, which humans have been using continuously for 7,000 years. Along with being historically geologically stable, the mine is also extremely dry due to the salt it contains, and is also located under a mountain, which means the immense weight that sits atop of it keeps it naturally airtight from the outside world. The Memory of Mankind project is potentially the longest lasting preservation project humans have ever made. It will survive until the year 1 million. Alright, here's where things start picking up a little. The next level is going to take us all the way to the year 1 billion. And I think this is when things start feeling really foreign. Like I said earlier, a million years is a pretty short amount of time geologically, but a billion years, that's a different story. Allopatric speciation. When we start talking in time spans of millions of years and where we're going to be that far in the future, we need to start taking into account a very important and unavoidable force of life, evolution. The modern form of humans, Homo sapiens, have only been around for 300,000 years, but previous species of humans like Neanderthals, Homo erectus, Homo naledi pushed the timeline back millions of years. And just like we did in the past, humans in the future will evolve to become different. It's hard to say how the future humans of Earth will look, but if recent changes continue, the humans of the near future will likely be taller, smarter, and will live longer than us. However, the biggest evolutionary changes we'll see in the future are going to come when humans start colonizing the stars. Allopatric speciation is when groups of the same species become geographically isolated from one another and evolve to become different over time. Humans on Earth aren't isolated by any means, but the sheer vastness of space will become a significant geographical barrier. In 2 million years, there will be countless different species of humans living among the stars. Humans will evolve to acclimate to the planets they colonize, whether they grow more efficient lungs to accommodate a thinner atmosphere, stronger bones and muscles to accommodate a heavier gravitational pull, or maybe some will live permanently in zero-G between solar systems like the ouster humans of Hyperion. The possibilities are endless. Asteroid extinction event. 100 million years in the future, Earth will likely be hit by an asteroid very similar to the one that killed the dinosaurs 66 million years ago, along with 3/4 of all life on Earth at the time. 100 million years is unimaginably far in the future, so hopefully humanity has developed the technology to avoid this catastrophe, if we're even still around at all. Fossilized cities. The best lens we have into the distant past of Earth is fossils. Mineralized forms of dinosaurs, fish, bugs, bacteria, there are even fossilized trees from millions of years ago. We can really learn a lot about the past by examining fossils, but what will the future intelligent species of Earth have to examine millions of years in the future? They'll certainly find many human fossils buried deep beneath eons of dust and dirt, but what about all the things we've built? No other species has shaped the Earth quite like humans have. What's going to happen to concrete jungles like New York City or Tokyo 100 million years in the future? Well, a lot of it depends on whether plate tectonics are going to push any given city up or down over time. Cities that are slowly rising due to plate tectonics like San Francisco or Manchester will likely be eroded over time into nothing but dirt, but some cities like New Orleans or Amsterdam are slowly sinking, and because of that, these cities will slowly become enveloped by the Earth and fossilized over many eons. If these places really are abandoned, then the fossilized remains won't resemble a snapshot of time like Pompeii does, but rather it'll reflect long abandoned and rotting cities, like Pripyat. There very likely won't be any buildings left standing so far in the future, but what will remain are the things we've made under the surface. Basements, subway tunnels, underground passageways, these will all be preserved for future intelligent species to discover. Just like how we speculate on whether or not dinosaurs have feathers or what color they were, the future beings of Earth will speculate on whether or not humans lived exclusively underground, and if not, what our above ground settlements might have looked like. You might be thinking something like, oh, well, they're just going to find a picture of a city in a subway tunnel or something, right? But keep in mind the time span we're talking about now. The memory of mankind, the best preserved time capsule we've ever made, is only going to last 1 million years. 100 million years in the future, no picture or writing or digital data from now is going to survive unless we find a way to better preserve it in the future. The only thing that will remain that we've made are these fossilized cities. Pangaea Proxima. No landmass on Earth is perfectly still. Every continent is slowly moving due to the ever-changing plate tectonics happening under the surface. 200 million years ago, the continents as we know them today didn't exist at all. There was only one giant supercontinent known as Pangaea. In 250 million years in the future, the continents will once again all join together to form a new giant landmass called Pangaea Proxima. The consequences of every continent on Earth being physically joined together are massive. Evolution will likely greatly accelerate due to every terrestrial species of animal competing for the same landmass. Oxygen levels will also likely be much higher in this time period than they are today, which may lead to animals evolving to become larger, much like the dinosaurs that once existed on Pangaea 200 million years ago. Climate-wise, the center of this future mega island will be a desert more extreme than any that exists on Earth currently. Deserts, prairies, or steppe regions often result from a lack of water reaching the deep interior of a continent, and with all the continents joined together, the deep interior of Pangaea Proxima will be more water-starved than any place on Earth today, potentially reaching average summer temperatures of up to 55 degrees Celsius. The Book of the New Sun. The Book of the New Sun is the final piece of fiction in this Iceberg. It's a series of far-future fantasy books written by Gene Wolfe. They take place on Earth in a time when our sun is cooling. Earth at this point in the future is completely unrecognizable. The continents aren't where they used to be, and there's no cultural references or connections to our world that the reader could recognize. It might as well take place on an alien world. The book series follows a man named Severian who gets expelled from the Torturers Guild, a monk-like guild of law enforcers who enact punishment on people convicted of crimes in the name of the Autarch, the absolute monarch who rules over the parts of Earth that humans still control. Everything in the book is only seen through the eyes of the main character Severian, who, while educated, doesn't understand everything that's going on in this disconnected and classless world he lives in. His life and the things he does on his adventures aren't that different than that of a medieval fantasy character. He walks from village to village with a sword on his belt to take on contracts by the local townspeople, much like Geralt of Rivia in the Witcher series. But the noble people of Earth are traveling between worlds and using technology that seems like distant and poorly understood magic to Severian, and by extension, us, the readers. This lends a really interesting air of mystery and weirdness to this whole series. I really recommend picking one of these books up. They're probably the closest thing you can get to literary fiction and sci-fi. Solar intensification. With every passing year, the sun becomes very slightly more intense. On a human timescale, this increase in energy output is not even noticeable. But on a timescale of hundreds of millions of years, the consequences of this intensification will be dire. 800 million years in the future, the sun will intensify enough that plants will no longer have the ability to harvest energy through photosynthesis, which will cause all plant life on Earth to go slowly extinct over millions of years. I probably don't need to tell you that plant life disappearing is disastrous. Without plants to convert carbon dioxide into oxygen, the atmosphere will slowly lose its ozone layer, causing the Earth to not only become hotter but also radioactive. With a hot, oxygen-devoid radioactive surface with no plant life, most animal life on Earth will also go extinct. The only remaining animals at this point will have to survive underground, but even these animals will die out too. And the only remaining life on Earth in 900 million years will be basic one-cell organisms. At this point in time, Earth will be a barren wasteland devoid of life, like every other planet in the solar system. And with all non-microbial life on Earth now extinct, we're now at the final level of this iceberg, the depths. This level is going to bring us all the way to the end of time, which is a hard concept to grasp, but let's try it out. Mars' natural habitability. Not everything in this level is all doom and gloom. Remember how in the last level the sun became much more intense? Well, 1.5 billion years in the future, this increased luminosity is going to make Mars naturally habitable to life the same way Earth is right now. So while the Earth may be a barren wasteland, Mars may go on to have its own long period of having a rich ecosystem filled with many different species and forms of life like Earth has right now. Total Earth destruction. Over the next few billion years, after Mars becomes habitable, a few things will happen to the Earth. 2.8 billion years in the future, global warming will be so extreme that the coldest parts of Earth won't go below 147 degrees Celsius. The Earth's core will cool, plate tectonics will stop, and the last scraps of life that survived on Earth will go extinct. Without plate tectonics, the Earth's magnetosphere will shut down, and solar winds will slowly chip away at the atmosphere until it's completely gone. 3.5 billion years in the future, all water on Earth will be evaporated. All this water vapor will cause the surface temperature to skyrocket, with the average temperature increasing to 1000 degrees Celsius. 7.9 billion years, the sun will become a red giant and dramatically increase in size, and it will eventually swallow up the Earth entirely, destroying it. Speaking of destruction, sun's death. The sun becoming a red giant is the beginning of the end for our sun. It will remain a red giant for 2 billion years, after which it will become a white dwarf. White dwarfs are basically just a naked corpse of a star. They don't produce any new energy, they're just a bundle of hot elements that cools very slowly over trillions of years. This is the ultimate fate of our sun. The Big Rip. There are many different ideas and theories as to how the universe will end, and the theory closest to our time is the Big Rip, which may happen in 22 billion years. The Big Rip comes from the idea that matter is constantly drifting apart in the universe. Right now, this drift only happens on a cosmological scale, like stars and galaxies drifting apart from one another. But the Big Rip theory asserts that this drift will eventually start happening on a smaller and smaller scale until matter starts disintegrating. In 22 billion years in the future, this drift will peak and have a sort of explosion, ripping individual particles from one another at such an intensity that each particle of matter will be an infinite distance from the next, effectively destroying the universe. Cosmic light horizon. Okay, even if the Big Rip doesn't happen, cosmological drift is still a real thing that has real consequences. The cosmic light horizon is the farthest distance from us that we can see, or in other words, the boundary of our observable universe. Things can exist outside of our cosmic light horizon, but we can't interact or receive any kind of information about them. 150 billion years in the future, cosmological expansion will push galaxies so far apart that only our local group, which will have merged into one giant supergalaxy, will exist in our observable universe. 325 billion years in the future, every solar system will be so far apart from one another that each one will be isolated in its own observable universe, meaning the sky will be completely devoid of stars no matter where in the universe you are. Total star death. Just because we can't observe, interact, or receive any information about other stars doesn't mean they don't exist. But 100 trillion years in the future, all star formation will stop, and 10 trillion years after that, the universe will have effectively exhausted its solar energy supply, entering what's known as the degenerate era. At this point, the universe will slowly become much colder and darker. The Dark Era. After every star goes completely dark and every black hole exhausts its energy, we will enter the Dark Era of the universe. At this stage, entropy and cosmological drift will cause every particle in the universe to exist in its own cosmological horizon, meaning every particle of matter will be isolated in its own observable universe. This will be the final permanent state of our universe. At this point, nothing will ever change. The universe will exist with every particle in the exact same state forever. But what if it wasn't really the final state of the universe? Quantum fluctuations are random changes in energy levels at any point in space, and these changes happen completely unprovoked. Quantum tunneling is the ability for matter to pass through a barrier it shouldn't be able to pass through, like if you threw a ball at a wall and instead of bouncing back, it just appeared on the other side of the wall. Quantum tunneling is a real and observed phenomenon that happens on an incredibly small scale, and there's no limit on the amount of distance quantum tunneling can make matter travel. So if the universe stays in the static final state for an infinite amount of time, it's possible that at some insanely distant point in the future, quantum fluctuations might lead to an isolated particle of matter tunneling past the constraints of its cosmic horizon to exist within the gravitational pull of another particle, and they'll slowly drift towards each other and collide. This process might continue randomly for an ungodly amount of time until this bundle of matter has enough of a gravitational pull to start pulling the rest of the matter in the universe together and everything just restarts. A new Big Bang, a new universe. Okay, let's take a second and get back to reality. The universe has been around for 13 billion years. The heat death of the universe will occur in 10 to the power of 106 years. That's 10 with 105 zeros. To put that in perspective, 13 billion is 13 followed by 9 zeros. So, in other words, the current age of the universe can fit inside the time between now and the heat death of the universe 10 to the power of 97 times. That's 10 with 96 zeros. It's really hard to grasp just how old the universe will be when it dies and how young it is now. Let's put it like this. If an average human lives, let's say 85 years, that's about 2.7 billion seconds. So the universe is still many orders of magnitude younger than a baby that's lived for only 1/1,000,000th of a second. So in other words, we still got plenty of time. Anyways guys, that's it for today. Thanks for watching.